we talked about the mind-substance. What do I mean by the mind-substance? You see, this mind is literally, it's not different than any of the other forms of energy in the existence. And one thing we need to understand about the mind, about this mind-substance is, you see, this mind, I've always described it, it's just like a sponge. It's just absorbing impressions, everything that's coming into you. Your intellect discriminates. It says, this is good, this is bad, I like this, I don't like this, this should be, this should not be. But this mind substance, it's just absorbing everything indiscriminately. So this is why, whether you're aware or unaware of whatever's happening in your experience, this mind is like a video camera, constantly recording everything that's entering into you. Now, one thing about the human brain is that, you see, if you look at, there's a certain pattern you'll notice all the way through the history of humanity, that always certain ideas which have been revolutionary have always been opposed in the beginning, whether it's in the area of science, whether it's in art, whether it's in politics, whether it's in economics, whether it's in physics, in just about any area of study. All these ideas which have been revolutionary have always been opposed in the beginning. And this is not a coincidence, because imagine every idea that enters into your brain is like a laser beam piercing through the brain. So the brain literally has to produce new pathways, new channels for every single new idea that enters into you. So, for example, suppose I'm sitting here and I'm talking to you. If you don't understand what I'm saying, then the channels in the brain have not been developed to take in these ideas. Or if I'm talking in such a way that all of you understand what I am saying, that means all the channels in your brain are allowing these ideas to sink in. So this is the thing about the brain. One part of it is that it's very deeply conditioned, yet another part of it is very highly adaptable. Besides the conditioning of the brain, we also have the conditioning of the mind, and that is something which is far more essential to understand, because you might measure what is the activity of the brain. You can hook your brain up to a brain scan. This still will not give you insight into what are your internal thought processes. For this, you need to learn a certain science of how to directly observe the mind as it is in the present moment. Now, in yoga, there's something that we've talked about as samskaras. So every experience that you are having through the five senses, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, you're absorbing this heap of impressions into your mind. Now, these heap of impressions, maybe they will arise for a few moments, but they don't just disappear. Those impressions, they sink down into your memory banks, in the depths of your unconscious, and it gathers force there. So this is why this is a huge fallacy that something happens in your experience which you don't like. If you try to escape from it, that you've done away with it. It's not so. It has been retained in your unconscious mind as a memory. So, one way to understand this is, imagine these seeds of impressions, these seeds of conditioning. Imagine it's just like the ringing of it's just like a bell. You hit the sound of the bell. Out of the hitting of the bell, there's the ringing of the bell. So from these seeds of conditioning in your mind, now there are tendencies that are set in motion. So suppose, for example, you remember a certain time in your life where somebody had caused great pain to you. What's happening is that these seed impressions in your unconscious are being triggered, and it's setting off these tendencies. So, an analogy I like to give for this is, imagine the mind substance is just like water. The activities of the mind are like ripples and waves on the surface of the water. And deep down at the very bottom of the lake is your true nature, something within you which remains unchanged, regardless of the changes of the mind and body. So this deep nature that's at the very depth of the lake, this has remained hidden from human perception because we are too caught up in the ripples and waves that's happening on the surface of the mind's lake. So this is why a big emphasis has always been in meditation, to bring the activity of the mind to a stillness. Because once the mind has become totally still, just like a lake, then it has this mirror-like quality. It just reflects things as they are. It's pure perception. And that's what brings clarity to you. When you are capable of an intelligence which is unprejudiced, where neither liking or disliking, there's just pure perception. This pure perception in yoga we are calling samadhi. So one of the deepest causes of human suffering is that you're too identified with the outer layerings of the body and the mind, and the innermost core of what is your nature has remained outside of one's experience. There's a story I remember. There was once, sometimes in the wild, some animals, they abandon their offspring. So there was this mother lion who abandoned her cub for whatever reason. And one day, there was a very old sheep. He's the leader of the tribe of sheeps. He's moving through the forest. He sees this young lion cub that has been abandoned. So some compassion arises in his heart. I don't want to just leave this cub here. Let me take it in. Maybe this cub will be accepted by the community. So he takes the cub, introduces it to the sheep. They all agree, okay, fine. We will take care of the young lion. So now the lion, for years, he's raised to be just like a sheep. He's thinking like a sheep. He's eating like a sheep. He's making sounds like a sheep. He's doing everything like a sheep. Several years later, a wild lion, the king of the jungle, is traveling through the forest. He's getting ready for his meal to attack the small tribe of sheep. But amongst these sheep, he notices there's a lion there. He's very confused. I'm the king of the jungle. There's another king of the jungle here. But what's he doing amongst all these sheep? So he attacks the tribe of sheep. They all scatter in a million different directions. But that one cub, he's shivering in the corner. He's very confused. He said, "What are you doing here?" He didn't want to reply. He said, "No, you must respond. What are you doing here?" He said, "What do you mean what I am doing here? I am a sheep. I'm amongst my family." He said, "No, you're not a sheep. From where did you get this idea that you are a sheep?" So the lion, he said, "Okay, I have to demonstrate the point directly. No amount of brilliant logic is going to cut through this false identification that he is a sheep." So he just dragged the other lion to a very quiet, calm lake. He said, "Just look into the lake at your reflection. Tell me what you see." He looked in the lake. For the first time, he sees his true face, that he is a lion. Immediately, all his very wild, ancient instincts come bursting to the surface, and he gives out a huge roar. And hearing the roar, he knows now 100% for certain that he is not a sheep. He has forgotten what is his true nature. And this is very much how human life is like. From a very young age, we are conditioned, first of all of this, to me, this is one of the greatest injustices that has happened to human life, that from a very young age, we've been taught always to direct our attention externally, outwards into the world. From parents, forget about parents. The way that your mind and senses have been designed is they are designed for survival. Now, what does survival mean? Survival basically means all your attention must be focused on the external. Otherwise, you will not be capable of surviving in the body. So first and foremost, the mind and the senses have been designed for survival. That's why they are conditioned in such a way that everything is external. That aside, then we have the social conditioning. Parents telling you how you should be, how you should not be. If the parents are Christian, naturally they want the child to be Christian. If they are Muslim, they want the child to be Muslim. Trying to already mold the child in their own image. From there you go to the school. It's not really about true education, just filling the mind with more and more knowledge so that you can have a profession in the workplace. That cannot be true education, because true education has to do with self-knowledge, coming to know oneself. First, develop the faculties of your own mind, your own intelligence, your own concentration, and then you will have effective instruments then to gather knowledge. But already from the very beginning, like in the classroom, the teacher tells you, concentrate. But he doesn't tell you what is concentration. He doesn't tell you what is it about the mind which is hindering your attention. Because, as I've said, our conditioning is such that all our attention has become externalized. You enter into the workplace, again, same story, just a means to make a living. So it seems, if you look in all corners of the society, this quality has been lacked, that how to direct your attention inwardly to come to a deeper understanding of your own being. What is the mechanism of your own mind? What is the mechanism of your own body? What are the karmas that the mind has gathered? You all have heard the word karma. I don't want you to have superstitious ideas about what is karma. The word karma, it literally means action. Just as the whole universe is working according to cause and effect, this mind is not an exception. This mind is also working according to cause and effect. So coming back to the karmas of your own mind, this is how we can understand it. All the impressions of past memories which are having an influence on your life in the present, that becomes your karma. So suppose somebody, he has had memories which have reinforced his desire for sex. If you gather enough of these impressions, it forms like a bundle. That's what we call habit. Now it becomes automatic. He naturally gravitates in that direction. It's not just about one experience. It's about a whole series of experiences. All the memories that we have in our mind are interconnected. They're not like separate islands working separately from the rest of the ocean. So that's why if we really want to have an understanding of what are the sufferings of the mind, we need to go very deep down to those very fine impressions that are there in the unconscious. Now, once you dissolve these fine impressions that are there in the unconscious, then you are free from them, because you've cut through the root cause. So, all of our sufferings in life has a definite root cause. Now, if you don't address the root cause, you will just be dealing with the symptoms of a problem. So then it will be just like you cut the bark of the tree, but its roots are still grounded in the earth. Once again, the same branches and the same leaves start growing once again, because the root cause has not been addressed. Now we have to deal with the symptoms of our problems, but we need to understand something, that dealing with the symptoms of our problems only brings you temporary relief. It is not a permanent solution. Now, a temporary solution is just a matter of convenience. It's just a convenience. Just any solution that gets you through the day. And it's very quick. And we live in a culture where we want a quick fix for all of our problems. But when it comes to finding a permanent solution for the problems of human suffering, the problem is now it's not a quick fix. It needs some amount of commitment, time, and discipline. And it's this kind of inward discipline which is lacking in human life, that all our attention has been externalized, but very little do we know about our own internal mechanism.